Mass Effect 2 has one of the worst plots in the history of gaming sequels. I don't know why, but I can say that a lot of you people who loved Mass Effect 1 and were expecting yet another epic storytelling adventure game felt a little disappointed. Now you might be thinking, why would anyone review the story of a third-person cover shooting video game? And to which I have to answer, because there is one. Most games, especially shooters, don't even care about story. There are games like Gears of War, which is a casual cover shooting Space Marine Bloom Halo clone with deformed jocks, with necks bigger than their heads, and perhaps the most retarded story in the history of boring cover shooters. But Mass Effect 2 had an entire other game to support itself, and that story was great. All BioWare had to do was ride the coattails of its predecessor into an epic space opera, lightsabering, oh, that's wrong franchise, spaceship fighting, cover shooting, combat blues, side boob, paradise sequel. And there'd be dramatic elements and epic happiness all round. But that didn't happen. As the premise goes, there's a big alien bug species called the Collectors, stealing human colonies out in the Terminus system. It's up to the Space Marine hero Shepard and a bunch of ragtag badasses to stop them before they take all the colonies, because that's bad. Just ask this guy.
I'd be disappointed if I could persuade you that easily.
It's like the Guns of Navarone, but that story was actually good. The story in Mass Effect 2 is there, so the problems I list aren't because the writers are bad per se. Simply put, it feels as if the writers were creating their worlds in a vacuum, with no connection to everyone else's worlds and no real understanding of how this all coherently comes together. There are quite a few problems, but I'll just list the 5 main ones, in excruciating detail. Number 1. The beginning. Within the first 10 minutes, Shepard and his ship get attacked by the Collectors. Shepard dies and then ends up getting resurrected by a terrorist group called Cerberus. Mass Effect is supposedly a trilogy, and the protagonist dies? One does not kill off a protagonist of a story to bring them back into the story immediately after, unless there's going to be some kind of serious exposition on the character. In science fiction, this is usually an existential moment. We learn a bit about the person, what makes them tick. This situation is also a good example of a Deus Ex Machina device. But in Mass Effect, there's no spirituality, no revelation. With Shepard, we get nothing. Resurrecting Shepard is bad for so many reasons, but I'll just list 3. 1, it's completely unbelievable. We're told Shepard has been rebuilt exactly as they were before. The problem with that is 1, his suit was punctured, so he died in space due to depressurization and absolute zero temperatures.
Subject has suffered significant cellular breakdown due to long-term exposure to vacuum and sub-zero temperatures.
2, we see his body hurtling toward the planet, provided there's no Earth-like atmosphere that implies Shepard's body doesn't disintegrate in it. 3, which means he then ran right into the planet at thousands of miles an hour. There wouldn't be a body to rebuild. Now, I could believe it if somehow his brain was preserved, because we actually get the opportunity to collect Shepard's helmet, but all we get is techno-jargon which doesn't explain that. When sci-fi uses death or resurrection, there's usually that magical dreamlike state involving a god, or a guy who can share his life force with others, or whatever. It's almost magical. Here we just get jargon that doesn't really tell us how this is possible. Visual details are nice, but we really need to know what the heck happened to his brain.
What have you done with Spock's brain?
We do not know Spock.
This is Spock. You saw him on the ship. You have his brain.
2, Cerberus' reasoning is ridiculous.
Shepard remains our best hope.
They'll follow him. He's a hero, a bloody icon. If we lose Shepard, humanity might well follow.
Then see to it that we don't lose him.
Why? Within the 2 years and 4 billion credits later, Cerberus could have taken care of the Collector threat before it even started, by hiring a bunch of these guys.
You could have trained an entire army for what you spent to bring me back.
You're unique, not just in ability or what you've experienced, but in what you represent. You stood for humanity at a key moment. You're more than a soldier. You're a symbol. And I don't know if the Reapers understand fear, but you killed one. They have to respect that.
Instead, hundreds of thousands of lives were lost. Not to mention in Mass Effect, Shepard was Cerberus' nemesis, taking out its facilities and agents. Why would you want a guy who at every turn screwed up every one of your plans he came across who's, oops, dead? Have they brought back people from the dead before? 'Cause if not, it's not worth the effort, maybe? How is his brain going to work? The fact that Shepard's dead at this point in the story just boggles the mind on just how insane Cerberus' reasoning is. 3. Wilson. So whatever, Shepard wakes up and fights his way through tutorial. Wilson is the main medical fellow who resurrected Shepard. Yet he's shot and killed by Miranda just because. Shepard just goes along with this.
If you say so. I had a feeling Wilson was just looking for a chance to shoot me in the back.
The only possible motivations we have for his betrayal are 1. He wasn't getting paid enough, and 2. Miranda was being an ice queen. Maybe he had a thing for genetics, who knows. Let's forget the fact that this was one of the guys who helped solve death from unknown, unexplainable damage cybernetic brain transplants, and that he'd be extremely famous and rich and probably get anything he wanted the day after, let alone being a medical fellow who wants to help people, not hurt them. Why would a head researcher want to hijack a base of operations they've been at after 2 years, after creating a medical miracle, potentially shooting himself in the leg to incur someone's trust, potentially get himself killed in the process unless he was faking having mechs come after him, get all the other researchers and people involved killed, all because he felt he should be making more money and some ice queen wasn't paying him enough attention? The guy is going to be a rock star. But whatever, we need a violent tutorial level, and Miranda has to show off she's always right. And boy, is she good at that.
What if you're wrong?
I'm never wrong. I thought you'd have learnt that by now, Jacob.
As stupid as it's painted to be, the only 2 reasons I can see why they did this was 1, to give the reason to join a terrorist cell, whom the character may be intimately familiar with in many ways from the prequel.
You enlisted and you survived a Thresher Maw attack that wiped out the rest of your team. Do you remember that?
And 2, marketing. For 1, Cerberus in the first game is nothing more than a pro-human extremist terrorist group that conducts lethal experiments on humans. Now, I like the idea of working for the enemy, but not without some good conflict and setup. So Shepard meets the Cerberus boss, named the Elusive Man, and just goes along with whatever he wants for the entire game. No conflict, no argument, nothing. Keep in mind, in one of Shepard's backstories, you end up being a sole survivor of an attack that destroyed his unit of 50 Marines, leaving Shepard psychologically scarred for life, all because of Cerberus. This is not the guy you want to bring back from the dead. For 2, I mean, obviously this was the real reason. A Deus Ex Machina device is traditionally used at the end of a story, not at the beginning to kickstart a plot, which really didn't need to be kickstarted. Why make a new bad guy when we already had one? Did anyone actually play the last game? So Shepard's back as Cyberspace Jesus, and so is a newer, upgraded Normandy. Fantastic! They thought of everything. Oh, and so is the pilot. And the useless doctor. Number 2. The plot. Wait, Mass Effect 2 has a plot? Before I go into the plot, I should make a distinction between plot, theme, and premise, because it's a bit confusing. As I stated before, the premise of Mass Effect 2 is aliens called the Collectors are taking human colonies. A theme is what a story is about. The theme of Mass Effect 2 is Commander Shepard gathers a bunch of people and deals with their daddy issues so they can go on a suicide mission. This is what's happening underneath the story. It's the meat and potatoes of it, if you will. I thought the theme would have been about Commander Shepard dealing with being rebuilt after being killed by the main opposing force, but nothing like that ever happens. It was as if being Cyber Jesus is no big deal. The only thing that changes is whether he still gets to shave or his face ends up looking like a volcano. There was obviously no reason to make Shepard a space messiah. Actually, I'd argue there's no reason to have Shepard at all, but I'll get to that later.